Welcome back, Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia, American Family Radio Network. We're going to get right back to the phones, 866-300-9298. I'll let you know. Let me slow it down. See, if my wife were here, she would be saying, would you slow down? Nobody gets your phone number. 866-300-9298. We are broadcasting live from the NRB convention. It's great to be here, and it's wonderful to have an opportunity to speak to so many fellow broadcasters, and I really appreciate that. It gives me kind of a pulse on what they're thinking and what is going through their minds, not only in reference to their own economy for their particular ministry, but just their feeling about what is going on. One of the things that I always like to do is talk to them about their donations, how that's going, because I think that gives us some indication as well as to what people are thinking. So interesting stuff, and I always enjoy being here. We were talking to Lynn from Oregon, and Lynn was, her question was, just to recap, her question was, when do you know you have too many stocks? When should you continue to add stocks? And do you add money to existing stocks if you're putting more money in, or do you just get totally new positions? So here's the thing, Lynn. It's a lot of it depends on how much money it is, obviously, because if you just look at it from a percentage standpoint, and so let's just say if you had $100 and you had 10 stocks, then you'd roughly have about 10% of that your money in each stock. Now, I am in a place where I think we should be overweighted. That means you would have maybe 15% in energy and maybe 5% somewhere else, so that you can get a little bit of an overweighting. And so what I would say to you is that you want to be careful, is that you don't want to get so many positions that it becomes diluted. It's one of the mistakes, frankly, that even mutual fund companies make, because you get so many positions with such a low percentage that if the market goes down, that's an okay thing, because you're probably not going to see a whole lot of movement on the downside. But if the market goes up, you're not going to get a lot of benefit from that, because it's so diluted. You've got a 0.5% in 20 different companies. And so I would say if you can keep it around 3 to 6% top at the low range, I think that would be fine. At the high range, probably 6 to 11%, somewhere in that neighborhood of the total amount that you have. Now, if you're going to add more stocks, then my word of caution is to really look and try to add something that is in a sector you don't have. So if you have energy, you have transportation, you've got consumer discretionaries like, Wendy's or, those kinds of things, try to go into a totally different sector. Try to use that additional stock as further diversification, because that would make a lot of sense. So that's what I would want to see you doing there. But here's what is a really good practice. So let's say you have 10 stocks right now, and one of them is just in the tank. I mean, it's just, doing horrible. That's the one you want to add to. So if you've got 10 stocks, 9 of them are kind of holding their own, but one is doing really poorly and you still feel it's a good company, then, try to add to that position. I wouldn't say double up on that position. That's a good thing to do if you can, but try to add to the positions that are down. And that makes the most sense. So if I had 7 stocks, 2 of them were in the tank, and I had new money to put in, I would probably add to those before I would buy another position. Does that help you, Lynn?
That gives me an idea. When you say 6 to 11%, do you mean 6 to 11% of of all of your money should be in that one stock, or 6 to 11% of your money that you have in stock should be in?
No. Six. So anytime, that's a good question. Anytime I talk about percentages, it's always your whole pot of money. It's not an account. It's not just stock positions. It's everything. So if you look on my website at my asset allocation models, and I say, I think you ought to have, for your age group, you ought to have, I don't know, say 20% in cash. I'm talking about everything. Your checking account, your IRA accounts, your savings accounts. I'm adding all that up, and then what is 20% of the total? So it's always the total. I look at everything as one pot of money. They're separate accounts, but everything from a diversification standpoint, everything should be one pot of money. Does that make sense?
It does.
Good.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. I sure appreciate it. Let me go to Charles. Charles calling us from Louisiana. Hey, Charles.
Yes, how you doing, Dan?
I'm doing well.
Kind of take you back in memory back to the 70s and early 80s. Would now be time for government to look at something like the old investment tax credit to encourage these corporations that are sitting on billions of dollars in cash to invest that in durable goods?
Great point, Charles. Yes, it would. It would be a great time to do that. And I have been on the side of that for 4 years. But this goes back to what you've just said, Charles, goes back to why I'm so concerned about this stinking government that has worked so hard to demonize corporations, to demonize profits, and to not create any incentives to bring that money. Charles, I don't know if you've ever been to one of my town hall meetings or maybe at the one that I did there in Louisiana last time, but every time I speak about that, people, after I scare everybody to death about the economy, I usually say, now, believe it or not, I'm optimistic. And what I mean by that is we have over $3 trillion corporate, $3 trillion sitting on the sidelines. $1.2 trillion of that is sitting overseas, and the rest of it's here in America. If we would just bring 1 trillion, just one, we don't need all three, 1 trillion of that money into our economy. And the way we do that is we need to incentivize corporations to do it. And if we did that, because I'm a capitalist and I believe in free market economies, that would have a dramatic turnabout for our economy. But there's and I don't know. I'm assuming that there's no will in Washington to do that. This is the most inept, this is the most economically inept administration and Congress that there's ever been in this nation. So I'm going to chalk it up for the fact that they're just inept, and maybe they really don't want a Marxist government someday. I don't know, but there's no reason why Charles from Louisiana can come up with that, and they can't. So this would be the perfect time to do that. Actually, the perfect time to do that would have been 2009. Because if we'd have done that in 2009, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be getting phone calls about, what am I going to do with all this money I'm making? So, but now's as good a time as that. I mean, we got to do it sooner or later. We need to do something.
Thank you.
All right, Charles. Good stuff. Thank you, brother. 866-300-9298. Let me go to Bob. Bob calling us from Georgia. Hey, Bob.
Hey, hello, Dan.
How are you?
I very much appreciate your biblical position and your financial wisdom on finances. My wife and I are both retired, and I have a question about, we have some of our savings in annuity. Am I able to mention the company?
Sure.
It's MetLife. And in the last '08 crash, I was told second or third hand that MetLife was a hair away from going under. I don't know if that's true or not. But in the event that we do have another crash, and I do think we are, as you have mentioned, how safe are annuity monies, is my question, Dan.
It's a good question, Bob. Here's what I would say to you. First off, they're only as safe as the products, in this case, in most annuities case, the mutual funds that are in, that the investments are in within that annuity product. So you might have a MetLife, as you indicated, annuity, and that might have 4 different mutual funds in it. Is that the kind of annuity that you have?
Dan, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. So obviously, you know this, Bob, that if the market crashes, the annuity is not going to save you because they're subject to market loss just like everything else. Now, if it is a fixed annuity where it's based on MetLife paying you X amount of dollars and it's just in some sort of fixed account at MetLife, that's going to be also dependent upon the market, but it's also going to be dependent upon the stability of MetLife being able to survive through some very volatile markets. Now, I don't know who said that in 2008, that MetLife was on the verge, as AIG was, and back then. I don't know that was the case. I mean, MetLife, as much as I dislike the products of annuities, MetLife is a strong insurance company financially. I mean, they're a strong insurance company. But listen, if we have a sustained market crash, it isn't going to be like the last one. This is going to last a lot longer, and it's going to be a lot deeper. And so anything goes. But it's hard for me to get too specific because I don't know what kind you have. But that's in general. That's what I'd be thinking.
It is a fixed annuity, and it gets 3%. At the bottom line, it gets 3%. I was told it could go higher.
So how long have you had it, Bob?
Oh, at least 10 years.
Has your principal ever gone down from year to year?
No.
So that's all, that's a MetLife product, and it's going to be subject to the stability of MetLife. So if there was and there is coming another crash, it could be in jeopardy. Could be in jeopardy because here's the thing. Let me just give you a scenario. MetLife's going to pay you 3%. Do you know anything out there that's fixed that you can get 3%? I don't. You can't get 3% on a CD. Maybe if you go out 30 years you can. So they're dependent internally on some other investment strategies that are going to go sour. And many years ago, it was in the 80s, the annuity world got a terrible hit, and because they couldn't meet their minimum interest rate that they were providing, and they got hammered. And a lot of them got out of the business, never went back in. So, yeah, you could be subject to that.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, Bob, thanks. I appreciate the call. 866-300-9298. The Dow's up 73 right now. So they were looking like they were pretty much flat on the open. They're up 73. The S&P's up 8. So, here we go again. The S&P is eyeing up a record, another record close. We'll see what happens. It's too early to even talk about it. We know that it's about 3:50 Eastern time, where we already have to start worrying about it and look at it. But we don't know what's going to bring. Pretty much last week, if you think about all the markets last week, you might not remember, but for the most part, every single day they opened in positive territory and didn't finish that well. So we'll wait and see how things shake out. There's some okay earnings reports that came out, so that might have something to do with it, but we'll see. The Dow's up 74 right now, and I got to look at the commodities here during the break. 866-300-9298. Let me go to Ryan. Ryan's calling us from North Carolina. Hey, Ryan.
Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Hey, my question is regarding the numbers that you were discussing earlier, the GDP and things like that. And my question is, how do we know that the numbers that are used to calculate these things are the real numbers?
I can almost tell you that they're not. Do we know that for a fact? I'll tell you what we know for a fact, Ryan. We know that in 2012, we nabbed a guy that was cooking the books for the Census Bureau that impacted the labor number. So I got to believe that there's some cooking of the books going on here, but I'll talk about that right after the break. Financial Issues, I'm Dan Celia. We'll be right back.